say greatest zombie game ever, what pops into your head first? Maybe Left 4 Dead would cross your mind. Dead Rising, Dying Light perhaps. Well, newsflash, fuck all those games. They all pale and decay in comparison to today's topic, Stubbs the Zombie in Rebel Without a Pulse, which is scientifically the greatest name a video game has ever had. Question is, does it live up to its title? Answer is, fuck yes it does. Wait, look at this. What are you stupid? Rebel Without a Pulse is a wonderfully wacky forgotten gem. Well, not forgotten anymore, but we'll get to that. It's 5 action-packed hours of violence, adventure, romance, breakdancing, and the hits don't stop till you're done, son. As I'm sure you can tell by now, this is a third-person zombie game played from the zombie's perspective, which is a fantastic concept that not enough games have mined. Usually playing as a monster is relegated to bonus modes or multiplayer modes like the ones in Left 4 Dead, Dying Light, Dead Space, or Resident Evil 6. Not here though. This is a fully fleshed out and defleshed experience where you step into the brain-dead boots of the titular Stubbs, aka the king of all zombies. He's a spiffy dresser, he's a social butterfly, he's a hopeless romantic, and he smokes. Because he's fucking cool. You don't gotta worry about that shit, he's already got holes chewed in him. We're talking about this masterpiece today courtesy of Nintendo, of all companies, as they opened 2021 with the weirdest flex ever by bringing back Nintendo Directs for the first time in over a year, only to sit millions of people down to watch a trailer for this stupid-ass game. And I, for one, could not be happier. This game matches my strange sensibilities like few others. It's honestly not that amazing of a game. It's like the most positive 6 out of 10 I could possibly give, but I can't help but appreciate the fact that it's just bizarre. And I'm talking like exploding kidneys, bowling ball heads bizarre. I don't know who drugged who, but somebody was lit on green when they greenlit this shit. Now, for some godforsaken reason, this game has been brought back from the dead. And as of today, you can turn on your console of choice and play Stubbs. Which is a sentence that fills me with nothing but pleasure to say. Go buy that shit. And while it's downloading in the background, let's talk about it a bit, using footage ripped straight from my original Xbox copy via the 360. Yeah, this game is backwards compatible. Couldn't get Time Splitter's Future Perfect on the list, but the farting zombie game made the cut just fine. On the topic of me having this original copy, me and old Stubby go way back. I didn't get my hands on Stubbs right when it launched in 2005 because I was 11. I was probably still trying to stick my dick in my bionicles, but I did play the game around February of 2006 when I strategically tricked my mother into buying an official Xbox magazine. With that magazine came a demo disc featuring none other than 20 minutes of Stubbs the Zombie. I gamed the motherfucking system to play that shit, and I tell you, I wore that disc out. I completed this factory bit so many times, dude, the layout of this level is seared into my brain to this very day. Well, I still got the game out. It would very much like you to know that it was made on the Halo engine from the executive producers of Halo. This is Halo tech, people. I mean, look at it. We're basically playing Halo here. There are literally 2 games in existence that use Halo Combat Evolved's game engine, and they are Halo Combat Evolved and Stubbs the Zombie. I don't know what else to say. Other than that's whack. We're getting off track though. Let's wind it back real quick and start at the start. We begin our story with the undeath of a salesman as we're introduced to our lovably homicidal lead, Stubbs. And he's a very relatable protagonist because like everybody in America these days, he's falling apart at the seams. Shortly after interrupting a shared wiener between teens, you're introduced to the game's central mechanics of eating brains and slapping the shit out of people.
Oh, my goodness!
Using either of these methods to de-life the sumptuous humans that surround leads to, you guessed it, more zombies, more friends. And that's what this game is really about, making lasting connections. What joy is there to be found in life or death without companionship? Using your newfound friends as fodder, your goal is to gnaw your way through the retro-futuristic city of Punch Bowl in search of an answer to the only real question you could have: why the fuck am I a zombie? This simple premise leads to hours of heinous hilarity, and that's a big selling point of Stubbs, the comedy element. There aren't enough good comedy games out there, and this is a great comedy game. Okay, it's not Shakespeare, but it's entertaining for what it is, shit. Like all good comedy, it's a get in, get out sort of thing, too. The game's length is appropriately stubby at about 5 hours, and I very much appreciate that. Rebel Without a Pulse knows that sometimes you don't need a 90-hour fantasy epic to pair with your 40-hour work week. Sometimes you don't want to think through 6,000 branching dialogue trees, or decide the fate of who on your ship is going to get dicked down by the commander this playthrough. Sometimes you just want to come home after a long day of work and fart on people. Sometimes you just want to laugh at stupid assholes and murder them because they suck, and then they become your friends, and you can whistle at them, or you can slap them like they owe you money. This game is a gift. Speaking on your zombie allies for a bit, you can't do much to control your fellow fiends after you've chewed them into existence other than pushing them around or whistling at them to get them to follow you. But despite their figurative and literal cognitive deficiencies, they're pretty useful, as they are zombies. You share a pretty similar goal.
Brains.
A big part of the fun of Stubbs is watching the undead AI go to town on the citizens of Punch Bowl. It's one of life's simple joys, truly. Rule number 32, we can't forget. Enjoy the little things. So to elaborate on the gameplay a bit more, what does playing as a zombie actually entail, besides entrails? Well, lots of brain eating to start, but contrary to what you might think on first thought, nibbling on noggins by pressing Y is not your main way of regaining health. While eating somebody's brain does up Stubbs' health by a smidgen of a sliver, you're more so reliant on its time-based recharge. Given about 5 seconds without taking any damage, Stubbs' health will quickly begin to refill, which encourages the player to hang back and let your minions do the work on low health, lest you get caught in a wave of enemy fire and accidentally kick the second bucket before the health recharge can even kick in. Play it safe, play it smart. That's the zombie way. What eating brains is mainly used for instead of health is recharging Stubbs' 4 abilities, which you unlock over the course of the game. These bad boys are what really deepen the gameplay and turn it into more than just an all-you-can-eat buffet. The combat here is all about knowing when and where to utilize what with regard to these 4 rechargeable skills. For future reference, these abilities are kidney grenades, a mind-controlling severed hand that allows you to possess enemies and use their weapons, debilitating flatulence that stuns enemies and allows all enemies, including tougher ones, to be insta-killed, and last but surely not least, we have the devastating, manually piloted bowling ball head bomb. It's sort of like those drivable drones in the Call of Duty games, but 1,000 times better because it makes meaty slapping noises.
You're outnumbered and outgunned.
That's some premium meat sound.
What you got there, Ben?
Mate.
Each time you cannibalize a motherfucker, these abilities are all individually recharged at varying rates. This variety in the amount of brains necessary to access each attack results in the player rarely having access to all 4 abilities at once, as the combat necessitates you use them constantly. You'll be throwing out kidney grenades left and right as they recharge real quick, but you'll likely have to wait through half an encounter before you get to toss out that juicy exploding head. Then again, if you're not careful enough, and if you don't forcefully draft enough soldiers into your undead army, you might die before you even get a chance to use it. It's basic resource management when you get down to it, but by the back half of the game, things get legitimately challenging, and ironically, you end up having to put a lot of thought into your brainless activities. Everything I've just broken down basically sums up the gameplay loop of Stubbs. It's a simple one, but it holds up the experience for its short runtime. You eat brains to gain abilities and allies, you use those abilities and your allies die, but you still need to kill more people so you make more zombies and you get more abilities and the savage cycle begins anew. This loop is also broken up by the occasional unique mechanic or vehicle segment. Yes, the zombie drives a tank because this game was made on the Halo engine and they clearly had access to the tank physics from Halo, so why the fuck is the zombie not gonna drive a tank? Can you give me one reason not to?
Because it doesn't make much sense.
I'm not taking any more reasons to fight. It's closed. Stubbs at one point also drives a hover car that spits out chunks of turf. It's called the Sodommobile. From the executive producers of Halo! Alright, so on top of this game's surprisingly in-depth core loop of building a flimsy undead army by combining your base attacks with your 4 abilities, there is also a surprising amount of detail built into the gameplay of Stubbs, which is what I want to highlight next. The gameplay is full of a bunch of small wrinkles that you'll suss out over the course of the campaign. I took some notes as I played, so I'm just going to go through these bullet points to get across what I'm talking about. First up, smacking people to death creates zombie allies faster than the long bite animations, but it doesn't regenerate your abilities. So if you need zombie buddies fast, what you need to do is go ham and start kicking motherfuckers in the shins until they die. If what you need is more juice in your abilities, however, you need to focus on biting enemies with Y. Eating brains is something to be enjoyed though. It takes a couple of seconds and leaves you in a vulnerable state, so pick your positioning wisely. Another one, Stubbs has to charge up his run, because his legs are fucked. It takes about 3 seconds of forward momentum to get Stubbs really going, and in the later levels you really have to account for that and maneuver accordingly. Basically, running directly at a group of well-armed enemies with only your dead hands and a dream isn't gonna end well. You gotta shamble between cover to build up speed so you can get to those enemies before they send you to a late grave. Here's a fun one. An enemy wearing a helmet can't be possessed by your evil hand, which goes hand in hand with another detail. Sometimes if you possess an enemy who's standing right next to another one, they'll help by smacking your hand off the other character's head. Gotta be careful where you throw your severed hands, is what my mom always taught me. Remaining enemies, when there's only 1 or 2 left, will sometimes freak out and flee, becoming instant kill targets where they might have previously taken 3 or 4 hits to become vulnerable to your brain bites. And the last detail I want to mention is a more general one that you can see throughout some of the other stuff I've mentioned. It's just the simple fact that the zombie POV gimmick permeates every part of the game. You move slow as shit because your legs are decayed. You throw your organs as weapons. Robots don't attack you initially because they just don't understand you. Your character's vocabulary only ever consists of the word brains. It's fucking great. The devs over at Wide Load committed so hard to this premise that it's impossible not to admire. There were no compromises made here. It really makes you feel like you're dead. And with that, let's move away from the gameplay for a bit and talk about the real reason you're here, which is this game's sick-ass soundtrack.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Yeah, I'm actually serious right now. This shit is bumping. I'm sure there are a couple of you in the know, but for those of you who aren't, this game had a surprisingly mainstream soundtrack. This shit got a Pitchfork review in 2005. And looking at this list of artists, it legit seems like they spent more money on the soundtrack than the actual game. They got Cake, The Flaming Lips, Death Cab for Cutie. I feel like a majority of my audience won't recognize these band names because I think I'm mostly watched by babies, but some of these groups were a big fucking deal. These are real ass bands performing for what is effectively the video game equivalent of one of those trailers you see before Grindhouse. If you liked Hobo with a Shotgun, you'll love Stubbs the Zombie. Which sounded kind of sarcastic as I was saying it, but it's actually true. Man, I gotta watch Hobo with a Shotgun again. R.I.P. Rutger Hauer, goddamn. The soundtrack of Stubbs is played a few times throughout the game, but it's never really highlighted outside of the main menu, which feels like a huge fucking waste of money. If nothing else, it's fun to occasionally pick up on a rousing rendition of Lollipop Lollipop in the background as you see just how many licks it takes to get to the center of a man's brain pan. It's a solid OST. There's a couple of bangers on here. Check out the playlist on YouTube. It's worth a couple minutes. Fun fact though, outside of the curated soundtrack composed of music from outside sources, the game's actual score was composed by Michael Salvatori, the composer of Destiny and Destiny 2.
From humble beginnings.
I'm sorry for constantly editing in these farts. I never use fart jokes in my videos because I think they're dumb, but this is like the one context where I have a free fart pass and I'm gonna use it, goddammit. I suppose we could talk about this game's story for a minute, although there's not much to talk about. As mentioned earlier, you play as a character whose knowledge of the English language extends to 6 letters, arranged in a very specific order, so you don't get a lot of dialogue or in-depth story beats in these cutscenes. Stubbs the Zombie is not a narrative-heavy game, as you might have surmised. These cinematics are basically only there to transition between levels and hang jokes on. Sometimes these jokes work, and sometimes they really fall flat because of bad sound mixing or just weird timing or blocking that fumbles a gag.
I'm on the verge of the greatest scientific breakthrough in human history. I have been studying your tissue samples. Truly fascinating. Did you know your reanimation is the result of a cat?
Like, could you even hear what those scientists just said? I mean, it might have been funny, I'm not sure. There are undoubtedly some memorable moments to be found here, though, one of which I already showcased, when Stubbs gives an impassioned speech using only the word brains, but the gameplay here is really where it's at. I love that the developers worked comedy into the gameplay. The abilities are funny, the environments are funny, the death cries are funny. My god, if there was an annual award for the best death rattles in a video game, Stubbs would sweep that category every fucking year.
I've never been disarmed. I can still kick you to death. What's next?
Oh shit, speaking of gameplay, I forgot to mention that there's a multiplayer mode where a second player can jump in and control a second Stubbs, who I can only assume is named Nubs. The second player's character model is no different from the first, it's just Stubbs again, and I am fine with that. It's just the same zombie, and it's amazing, and so dumb. Amazing in its dumbness, like most of the game. That's my pull quote right there.
In conclusion,
when I think of the greatest zombie game ever, well, I think of Dying Light. But when I think of the most unique zombie game, the most distinct and different zombie game with a weird-ass vibe like no other, I think of Stubbs. That's not to say it's a perfect game, of course. I kinda glazed over some of the game's faults because honestly I'm looking at this thing through military-grade nostalgia goggles, but it's got its problems. The writing isn't exactly as sharp as I remember it being. The audio mixing is just plain bad, with some sounds being roughly 1,000 times louder than others. Looking at you, laser gun. I said, looking at you, laser gun. The art design is noticeably haphazard at times. Like, it looks like somebody's first Unreal Tournament 3 community map sometime. But none of that shit matters, because this game has it. Stubbs has personality, it's got style, it's got class, and it's got... I don't even gotta say it. I'm gonna end on words that I wrote about Stubbs the one other time I've really talked about it on the channel, in my third Forgotten Gems countdown, nearly 4 years ago. Past Charlie, let him have it. Stubbs the Zombie is a hilarious romp through a ridiculous world, and it's packed with romance and heart aplenty. It's a story that sticks with you, and it begs the question, who's the real monster here? Just because I mercilessly killed everybody that lived within a 20-mile radius of the site of my death, does that really make me the bad guy? Or is the real bad guy big business? Food for thought. Thoughts for food.